overtime, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back here we got the beard. We swapped out the bot. We've got a beard now. I'm excited that he's here. And we're about to recap what happened in North America. If you missed this weekend, it was a killer. Such exciting action all weekend long. And we got started off with Selfless versus Genesis. Selfless coming out of the gates swinging in both of their matches. Had to run a different roster in both games there. Managed to get the win both times.
And that first game is probably the most nerve-wracking for Selfless versus Genesis. Both teams coming in probably pretty flat, but then as soon as the game started going, Timmy, the one who can only play in the weekends, was showing up big time.
I mean, the fact that you have a player that can only play 2 days out of the week, and he's performing as well as he is absolutely insane. And to switch a roster halfway through your series, you have one series, you play the whole thing with one player, you get comfortable, and then you have to interject it with somebody else. I mean, the fact that they can still pull it off is impressive.
It was so much fun to watch in game one. Timmy, 0-second goal as the very first game of league play. And then they just continue to roll. Genesis is one of those teams that everyone picked as maybe a LAN team, and Selfless is like, no, don't forget about us. We're still here.
Genesis performs well, and it's interesting to see them get, the series ended in a 3-1. Selfless ended up taking it. Genesis did perform well, but it just seemed a little bit too much to handle what Selfless was able to throw at their wake.
So that does leave Selfless here, taking the win over Genesis, 3-1 as you said. Then they move on to Radiance. Dapper has to step out. Pluto comes in. Doesn't change anything as Pluto was in top form.
That 4-man rotation actually pays off for them. Probably helped that they did get to play Radiance, who's probably the weakest team. But Pluto coming in, playing his normal third rotation on defense, not allowing shots from Radiance to come in.
And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, who's Radiance? If you didn't watch the qualifiers, they are a team that caught us all off guard, knocking out some of the Titans that we've seen so far. Here in the RLCS, brought one to the lower bracket and then knocked another. They stayed in the upper the whole time, which means they didn't lose a single game all qualifier. And Radiance, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. I think they can pull it off, but this series, they had a hard time.
And Pluto, with like when he was on Genesis, he was the one who would just control that defensive midfield, and it seemed like Selfless was very comfortable throughout the series. Miho with a double bump there to the pass to Pluto. 4-man rotations are phenomenal for them. Doesn't work with everyone, but it's working for them right now.
I mean, just to comment a bit, because you mentioned they have a 4-man solid roster, which not many teams have. A lot of times you see teams, they'll get their 3, and their 4th is just somebody that's been competing for a while. They know what they're doing, but they're not one of the top players generally. Sometimes they have someone that's like just on that cusp that didn't make it on a single roster. I'm a huge fan of actually being able to have that 4-man roster. There was a team a long time ago, Zero Effort, when they were competing in a community tournament. They would actually tactically sub in halfway through a series because the rules allowed it in that certain specific tournament. I mean, as long as they were on your roster, you were allowed to put them in halfway through. So even if they were all playing really well, they just sub in. And it worked for them against certain teams that were really good at honing in and couldn't adjust as well. And I think it's a really interesting tactic to be able to pull out if you need it, that from one series to the next, you can put in somebody else that they're not performing.
But my main concern is trying to make 4 players compete at the highest of levels, and then having to worry about like who's actually going to start, say, for playoffs with a 3 versus 6 seed. It's a best of 7. You have one chance at it. You're probably not going to sub in the middle of the series. I would rather focus on just 3 players. It is great to have a 4th, but when it matters the most, you only need 3 on the field, and I would rather just try and practice with those 3.
Now, Selfless had a strong start here in week 1, getting their second win over Radiance, who, if you want to cheer for underdogs, Radiance is the team for you, but they struggled in the first week. They went up against Selfless, and then they hit the reigning North American champions, NRG, as they showed up in top form.
And honestly, this game was kind of rough to watch at times with NRG not worrying about goals too much, just worrying about just keeping the pressure on. It took Radiance 9 minutes to get a shot on net.
That is actually, I did not know that. That is an uncomfortable statistic to have to deal with, but NRG, a team that has always been comfortable controlling the field. And they are a team that just these 3 players alone, we have seen show up at the RLCS time and time again, and Radius being the newcomers. I mean, it's like walking up to like a 7-foot person and just like not being intimidated. You're going to, no matter what, be intimidated with just the experience NRG has.
And what's crazy about it is Fireburner and Garrett are coming over, number 1 and number 2 goal scorers, and now Jacob leading the lead for NRG with 4 goals during that series, and he continued it through into the second series as well.
In the second series here, they go up against Turtle's new roster, Atelier and NRG. We talked a lot about Jacob this weekend. We talked earlier, you said Timmy got a buzzer beater. So did Jacob in this series, both of them in game number 1.
This was a really entertaining series. A Turtle with that mind game, like in overtime, was great to see. And then Jacob, the highlight reel of Saturday, was just playing phenomenally.
Now, Atelier is a team that I really wanted to watch coming into it as soon as I found out they were a roster, because the Matt and Sizz duo is a duo that I've always been just a fan of. These guys dominating the duo ladder in competitive play. Every 2's tournament they joined for like 7 months, they just won. They're so good together, they've got a lot of experience, and bringing Turtle into that, I think it might take a bit for them to really mesh together, but giving them a few weeks with experience, I think they're really going to start coming out.
Now, we saw Selfless start off the day 2-0, then NRG shows up, also gets 2 wins under their belt. And this poses the question, with NRG, we see them show up, they dominate in both Seasons 1 and Season 2 on online, struggle at the LAN. Is that going to have a three-peat here? Are they going to be able to take it? Are they still number 1 in North America online?
It's very possible. It's so tight between probably just them and G2, I think, for that number 1 spot. But they make a really strong case. Over the past 3 weeks, they've beaten G2 twice. So they have that number 1 spot right now. I'm still waiting for that matchup later on, where it's G2 versus NRG when it matters most.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I want to give it to NRG as far as like who I think right now is the dominant force in North America. But again, not seeing them go toe-to-toe on the RLCS just yet, it's a prediction I don't want to make, because I think G2 in general has, just immense skill all around. And you look at NRG, I think the ways they approach the pitch are so much different. You look at NRG and you've got Jacob, who just does wild things all over the place. Fireburner, who's just known to constantly score. Garrett,
It's just Garrett.
It's Garrett. He got the nickname Oh My Garrett for a reason. He does something impressive every single game. I think they both have a different tone when they step on the pitch and when they start going into a game. I don't want to make the prediction, but my heart wants to go with NRG right now.
Now, you guys brought up G2, and the story of North America this weekend was G2 versus Atelier. This match looked like G2 was going to be swept, but then they come back in 3 games in reverse sweep.
They lost game 1 4-0, and everyone's like, is G2 pulling the same thing that they did in Season 2? And it sure was looking that way. Turtle was playing out of his mind. The entire squad was really, but then all of a sudden, after the 2 losses, JNAPS shows up.
It can't feel good, and this is what I mean. G2 has the capabilities, but their tendencies to do this sometimes, where they just look scary. They bring so many series to game 5. We've seen it time and time again, where they're not able to start off strong, and they come into their skin sometimes a little bit too late. This time, it was just in time.
And then this mind game from JNAPS, I believe we're seeing it here, but was a phenomenal play in overtime to pull this mind game off on Matt and get the block to win. What a reverse sweep there. And then they just keep the momentum going versus Denial.
Going up against the Canadian squad here. Denial, first time on the RLCS stage. Glad to see this organization here. Not a bad start overall for them. They do drop their series here to G2, but they are able to take it in the next one.
This was the first 3-0 we saw of the day, so the day had gone long all the way through here, and this is the first time we saw any team pretty much have dominance throughout the entire series. And I think, as we know, G2 is a team that they kind of ramp into their skill. They start off cold, and then they always ramp up into their skill, but Denial, not a team to laugh at.
And it was very controlled by G2, but they only won 2-1, 2-1, and 2-0, so it was still close for Denial, and they kept their heads up going into this last series, where we see yet another sweep.
Yeah, they were able to take on Take3, both Genesis and Take3 rosters from last season that only played 1 game here in the first weekend of RLCS. Did not go well for Take3, but they're only down 0-1, so Denial was able to get the win.
Yeah, Take3 looked really rough during qualifiers as well. Vince had to kind of carry them. Zane not playing well on the defensive end, and we saw a lot of Espeon player cam where he kind of just looked lost. Very similar situation here for Denial. Vince didn't look as strong, but it's very hard to carry a team in back-to-back weeks.
I've been keeping an eye on Take3. I think they definitely have the capabilities of being one of those dark horse style teams of just surprising one of the top tiers 1 week and just maybe dominating them. But the problem that I see and what it seems to be is that no one really takes control. I know you don't really need a captain on field per se, but in communications and in decision making, I notice a lot of teams that thrive have someone that's always there to tell people like what the right and wrong decision are at times. Espeon, great player, lacks a lot of confidence. And I think Zane Jackie has always kind of just tried to play the pitches of what's going on and mold to what's going on. And since no one's really taking that lead, we see a lot of hesitation in just small plays. Every now and then it's like, I'm on ball cam and I'm watching Espion. I'm like, all right, he's going to go for this. He waits about half a second and then he goes. I'm like, I shouldn't know before when Espion's going for a ball. I mean, he's a way better player than I'll ever be. So it's just that small hesitation, I think, is the only thing that's stopping them from really putting up the competition right now.
So, I mean, this is a good kind of transition into it. As we look at the standings here, you'll see Take-3 is kind of at the bottom of the standings at the moment after only 1 week of play. And is this a situation where Take-3 needs to be worried after dropping that game?
I would be extremely concerned for them because 2 weeks in a row where they really haven't showed up, when a lot of people thought they might be the 4th best team right now going into it. Right now, it does not look like that at all. It looks like they might even miss playoffs to me right now. Vince is the only one that has shown anything at all for the first 2 weeks. So Zane and Espion have to get that confidence back, which is really hard to do. Probably the best way to do it is to play community tournaments and hopefully get a win throughout the week and then bring it into the RLCS on Saturdays.
And good for them. They only played 1 match this week.
Yeah.
So as far as having a bad week and feeling down on yourself, this is the best week of all, right? They only had 1 game this week, so you can take that loss in stride. You can understand, okay, we can start off with 1 loss, but a lot of teams had to get a loss this week, so they're not in the dirt just yet. And I think now's the time to kind of reset and realize, what are we doing wrong? Why are we struggling against these teams that are really bringing it to us?
Well, that will wrap up our summary of the North American region for week number 1. When we come back, we're going to hop the pond and go over to Europe and see what happened over there. If you thought North American was exciting, hold on to your seats because Europe was even better. We'll be right back.